We are back for Mock Draft Monday. Was on Tuesday last week. I don't mind Tuesday. Seems like the NFL is trying to get away with a game every day of the week nowadays. It's tough to get the schedule actually in a comfortable spot. However, the Giants, for the first time in a while, maybe even technically all season, are in lone possession of that number one overall spot. Of course, I'm a Giants fan. Here's the deal. I'm just not particularly ecstatic about this quarterback class, as I've said a billion times. I really think it'll depend on what happens with the Giants general manager and head coach and Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. If you bring in a new head coach, or maybe even just a new GM, are the Giants a lock to take a QB here in a down QB year? I think they're pretty likely to, just because you're at the number one spot. You know, you can have your pick of the quarterbacks, but it's just not an especially good pick. Anyway, I don't know. I think if I had job security and we're making the pick, I mean, obviously you'd look to trade down, but it might just be take the best non-QB. And that might be Travis Hunter, right? Or, you know, trade down and try to see what happens. If you can, you know, stay within like the top 6 picks, you can still get a pretty good player here. I don't know. Anyway, I think the Giants will take a quarterback. I do think Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in the class, but as I've mentioned, I don't think it's an especially good quarterback class. So how good can I feel about it, right? Patriots at number 2. I'm going Travis Hunter. I think he's going to be the first non-quarterback off the board. Is there a scenario where it's Abdul Carter or maybe even an offensive lineman? I think possibly, but the Patriots are not going to take a QB. The Jags wouldn't. The Titans is the next quarterback spot. The Browns and the Raiders could all potentially use quarterback. We might see a trade with either of these two selections. Although I do think the Patriots would be more likely to stick and pick Travis Hunter. And I think the Jaguars would potentially be this trade down spot. Things get a little interesting, but no trades at this point in the year. So we'll see what happens as we move on. But we'll also see what happens with today's sponsor, Underdog. This video is sponsored by Underdog. It's the best place to play daily fantasy sports. And my favorite, the Pick'em mode. I'll show you my picks for Monday Night Football here in a minute. But you might not even know that your state might be eligible and available to play Pick'em in. If you live in a state that's gray, you are ineligible to play Pick'em, but you could be eligible for drafts. If you live in any one of these yellow states, you can play Classic Pick'em. If you live in one of the green states, you can play Pick'em Champions, which is effectively a very, very similar thing. Still making picks. It's just slightly different with how it functions. Now, if you are a new customer, of course, use code BENGAL at signup. You'll get, you know, a chance for a ton of bonus cash to play with, but you'll also get a free pick tonight. Jordan Love, higher than 0.5 total yards. So if he passes for a yard or more, if he runs for a yard or more, if he gets 1 total yard or more, you are a winner on this particular pick. And hopefully I have some other good picks you can add those to really, really do well. This is my first of 2. Josh Jacobs has been on a roll. He's been the heart and soul of this Green Bay Packers offense. Higher 18.65 fantasy points. He's been over a lot recently. And then it's a really good matchup for Saints tight ends. Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau have been producing, even with Spencer Rattler, who has not necessarily been producing, or Derek Carr, who has not necessarily been producing. Rattler, of course, going tonight for the Saints. But Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, I'm taking both of the Saints' big targets and predicting that they're going to get, you know, 50-ish combined yards. But, of course, it has to be with these individual numbers for each player. So that's the first one. I highly recommend sticking to 3-man entries. You could go 2. I think when you go 4 or 5, there's a lot that can go wrong unless you flex it, which is a possibility. My other entry is Josh Jacobs, of course, higher fantasy points, and then Spencer Rattler, lower passing yards at 182.5. He's been under it. And it's not a great matchup necessarily against Green Bay. They're not the best pass defense ever, but they're still better than what Spencer Rattler has been doing numbers-wise recently. And then Kendre Miller, I just don't think is going to score a touchdown. So you can mix and match, pick the ones that you like. Those are my picks tonight. Use code BENGAL on Underdog. Link down in the description and sign up. Get that new customer free pick with Jordan Love. And again, use code BENGAL. And as I've kind of mentioned, this number 3 spot just doesn't seem right. Travis Hunter's off the board. This is where a team would be looking to trade down. But as I've always said, a team just can't trade down. You need someone that wants to move up, and in a not so great overall class, how much is that going to happen inside the top 6 or 7 picks, inside the top 5, maybe even inside the top 10? I really don't know. It's tough to say. But this class is really lacking in blue chip players, and you're going to find talent outside the top 10 picks, outside the first round, outside day 1 and 2. It just always happens, right? But it's potentially few and far between, and just doesn't look overwhelmingly inspiring. So 3 is an interesting spot where it does feel like, is it a little bit too early for Will Johnson in the grand scheme of things? I don't know. I think he's potentially a top 3 player in the class, but are you going to see a corner go at number 2 and then number 3 overall? Hunter's a little bit of a weird one, but I do think we've seen similar spots with Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner. Those have been good players, right? I think it's definitely possible in what feels like a bit of a weird year. I think the Jags could just use an upgrade at the position, and now I think you've solidified CB1 and CB2. You still obviously have other needs, but Will Johnson's just a really good player. I think he's going to be a good pro. As we get to the Titans at number 4, the Titans is an interesting spot here because you bench Will Levis, which I think mostly closes the door on Will Levis in Tennessee. I think that's just pretty much the end of it. You make that decision to bench him. You're saying we're giving up on him. Now, on the contrary, you can talk about how the Panthers did with Bryce Young, and they brought him back, and he started, and he's been pretty good. Ups and downs, of course, but a young quarterback. I think we got to stop giving up on these guys so early. The difference between Bryce Young and Will Levis is, of course, their draft position. Bryce Young went 1-1. Will Levis was a second-round pick. I think there's not necessarily maybe the need to hold on to him the same way that the Panthers maybe felt that way with Bryce Young. But I do think, you choose Mason Rudolph over Will Levis. You're in play for a quarterback, and I really only think 2 quarterbacks are going to go round 1 at this point. Maybe there's a chance that somebody else sneaks in, but Drew Aller's going back to school. I would be absolutely shocked if Quinn Ewers was a first-round pick. I think maybe somebody takes a chance on Milroe. Kind of think about a Lamar Jackson type scenario where the Ravens move back up to like one of the last picks. I think it was the last pick of the first round, and they take a shot on a real athlete that is not necessarily polished, but Lamar Jackson was more polished than Jalen Milroe coming out. So it's definitely a really interesting situation. We can compare years and things that happen, right? But every new draft year is a new scenario because the players are very different. The teams are picking in a very different order with different needs. And also, as the NFL continues to grow, teams are prioritizing different things. And we're not seeing as many running backs go inside the top 5 like we used to. And we're not seeing, quarterbacks just go wherever. Teams are taking QBs at the top of the draft because everyone realizes it's the most important position. A lot of rambling, a lot of ranting, a lot of yapping so far in this video. But the Browns is such an interesting spot because it'd be easy to pencil in Tetaroa McMillan. I think Mason Graham's in play. Ashton Genty's obviously in play. Nick Chubb's not under contract next year. You can't, and he's just got hurt again. You cannot necessarily rely on that, right? When I had penciled in Genty to the Browns earlier in the year, Nick Chubb bought a house in Cleveland. Everyone loves him. I don't care. I don't. You know what I look at? I look at a 28-year-old running back that's not under contract next year. What are we missing? But I do also think Abdul Carter is going to be a first-round pick, obviously, but I think he's going to go inside the top 5. And he's sliding a little bit here because of the teams picking in front. The Patriots, of course, passed on him in favor of Hunter. Not weird, really. The Jags went a different direction. Not weird, really. The Titans, I think, would be in play, but a quarterback was available and one that has upside. So here are the Browns at number 5. Myles Garrett is potentially up in the air. What's his future going to hold? Is Myles Garrett going to be a Brown for the foreseeable future? It seems like, he has been, but things could be changing in Cleveland. Myles Garrett has basically come out and said, hey, if we don't get it together, I want to get out of here. And I know that he's been so involved with the Cleveland community, and he's been a staple of the Browns, but the success has not been there, and it seems like things could be meeting a crossroads. Either way, I do think you need more help on the other side for Myles Garrett, but I also think there's a scenario where Myles Garrett is not a Cleveland Brown for the next 4 or 5 years, and when you draft Abdul Carter with this pick, you get him under contract for 4 years plus the 5th-year option. I know this is going to seem weird. I feel like some Browns fans are going to get whiplash here because, we're so used to seeing a tackle or a quarterback or a wide receiver. But Abdul Carter is the best player available right now, is a freak player, and I think would be really impactful on this Browns team. And I think if you're watching some of these college football playoff games, you're going to continue to see Penn State go. And Abdul Carter is a huge reason why. He's a stud player. I just think this is BPA. And that's a lot of what the NFL draft is. Raiders at number 6. It's another pick that feels weird. And and the draft order's changed a lot. We're changing up what we're doing and what we have been doing a lot inside this top 10. That will keep going on here as the Raiders select Ashton Jeanty. Of course, Tom Telesco is the new GM of the Raiders. Took Brock Bowers last year, right? Which basically, I think, told everybody that, hey, we're not locked into selecting a quarterback just because we need a QB. The Raiders are now out, potentially, of the QB sweepstakes in 2025. Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are off the board. Shedeur, we've said, is going to be a Raider for a while now, pretty much. You're out of position. But with the selection of Brock Bowers last year, I think Tom Telesco basically said, hey, we need more playmakers. Regardless of position, we need more playmakers. You bring in Brock Bowers, that worked out really well. He's one of the best tight ends in football already. Super, super impactful as a receiver. Now you bring in Ashton Jeanty. Your running back room is bad. I don't want to hear about Sincere McCormick or Amir Abdullah or Dylan Laube. These are maybe nice complementary options if we're going to be nice about it. Alex Madison, whatever. Ashton Jeanty is a bell cow, number 1 running back. I think Telesco setting the precedent of Bowers last year says that he doesn't care about position or positional value necessarily. We're taking the best player available at a position of need potentially, and that's what Jeanty is. I think he's a playmaker to add into this offense. You don't necessarily need a quarterback. You might not be getting one anyway. Maybe get a bridge QB, somebody better than Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. Maybe take a developmental quarterback somewhere down the board. But Jeanty here at number 6 is the selection. And I know we've taken a long time to get through these first 6 picks, but a lot has changed. And we're going to go Mason Graham here to the Panthers at number 7. It's been Abdul Carter for me with Carolina for a really long time now. He's finally off the board before Carolina picks. Mason Graham is the selection. And I get really excited about thinking about that defensive line, Mason Graham, Derek Brown playing together. Not that they'd be necessarily next to each other, but sometimes I think they'd be a really, really fun combo. And he's the pick. A top 5 player in the class or close to it. Panthers get him at 7. Jets at 8 going Teteroa McMillan, one of the best receivers in the class. Brings size into the receiving core. He's a lot better than Alan Lazard. I don't know what the deal is going to be with Aaron Rodgers, but there's no quarterback to be taken here. I don't know what the deal is going to be with Devontae Adams. But Garrett Wilson, Teteroa McMillan, maybe Devontae Adams. It's a pretty good receiving core. And again, it might just be best player available. The Jets have so many different needs for a team that you went into the season thinking they could be something, and they've not been anything. They're a terrible team, really. That offense is so disappointing. Bears at 9. I keep making this fit. I'm going to keep doing it. Will Campbell at number 9 to Chicago. He's arguably the best offensive lineman in this class. He could play guard. I know he's been a tackle at LSU, but probably a guard in this scenario. But maybe you try him at tackle. I don't know how you feel about Braxton Jones for the future, but Will Campbell is an upgrade on the O-line somewhere. That's the bottom line. Saints at 10. You got Mykel Williams here. Yeah, going to go Mykel Williams, of course, from Georgia. I've been hyping him up for a while now. If you go back and look at my way too early mock draft that came out, Mykel Williams and a number of these players were listed really low on the PFF big board for ranking. He was, I think, outside the top 60. I've been getting comments on that video recently with people saying, wow, he predicted Cam Ward was going to go off. I mean, I just really more just talked about the possibility of it. But, Mykel Williams is someone I think I had going at number 3 preseason, right? And I think he's still someone I feel really strongly about based on his traits. I think the NFL is going to love this guy. He's been injured, he's been hurt, but he's had some dominant games, and he's definitely had some dominant flashes. He's got the height, he's got the weight, he's got long arms, he's a really good athlete, just really feels like a saint. You look at their style of pass rusher that they like, or edge rusher in particular, it is a guy like Mykel Williams, height, weight, speed, and then arm length. I think that is a really good fit, and the opportunity to learn from Cam Jordan, I think, is going to be an incredible thing in this scenario. We're going to go Kelvin Banks here to the Niners at number 11. Get bigger and better and stronger and more athletic in the trenches. Kelvin Banks could potentially play guard, but I think he could also be a tackle. Of course, plays left tackle at Texas, has done so at a high level. I think he's going to end up being a top 15 pick at the lowest. And here he slides out of the top 10, but goes at number 11 to San Francisco. And that's your either eventual, Trent Williams replacement, or maybe even your starting right tackle right now. And maybe even he plays guard. There are some possibilities here with a lot of these tackles potentially playing guard at the next level. Banks is in the conversation, but he goes here top 15. Dolphins at 12. This is a tough one for me typically. I think if you're Miami, you'd love for these top couple of offensive linemen to still be on the board. But Malachi Starks does it feel a bit early for a safety? Just see the NFL not value this position, so it's tough to know, when exactly those guys are going to go. But Malachi Starks goes here at 12. Long story short, this is your Javon Holland replacement. I think you're going to be losing him to free agency. At number 13, thought about this one for a while, and I restarted and redid this mock draft for hours. Just, oh, no, I don't like that. I'm going to restart completely and see how things change with this new feeling. And I have been Tyler Warren at 13. But the more I think about it, the more Colston Loveland feels like the selection there at 13. And if Chris Ballard is still the GM, he's a big RAS guy, relative athletic score, which is a metric created by Kent Lee Platt at MathBum on Twitter. Great follow. And basically it's just height, weight, speed, agility. Ballard loves the freaks. I think Loveland will test better than Tyler Warren. And for an offense that could use a really great tight end, especially a great pass-catching one like Colston Loveland is, it does feel like it makes more sense for Indianapolis, just based on their draft history. I mean, if you were to go through and look at the high-scoring RAS guys, again, relative athletic score, basically the best athletes in the draft, Ballard has taken those guys at an unbelievable rate. And Loveland here is the selection at 13, because I do think he's just going to test better than Tyler Warren. And if you're looking for a pass-catching tight end, Loveland is about as good as you're going to find. Again, I think he can play big slot. I don't think he's necessarily the best inline player. I have to see how he develops as his career goes on. Bengals at 14. I had James Pierce Jr. here. The more I think about it, I just think Nick Scorton makes more sense for the body type that they prefer. Scorton is 6'4", 285. I just think based on the draft history for Cincinnati, just makes a little bit more sense than a pass rusher that's only 240 pounds in James Pierce. So Nick Scorton's what I'm going to live change to, but basically, long story short, that defense needs to improve. You need more help on the edge. They did keep Trey Hendrickson for another year with that mini extension, but Scorton on the other side I think is going to be a much needed addition to this defensive line. I think you've been pretty disappointed so far by what's been there, including former first-round pick Myles Murphy. Dallas Cowboys at 15. Gonna go to the trenches here. Gonna go to the defensive interior. And again, I keep talking about a player that I think should be rated a lot higher on this PFF big board. That is Derek Harmon. How strongly do I feel about that? Well, he's my first interior defensive lineman off the board. And to the Cowboys, with no Genti available, maybe you don't reach on another running back, even though I think Caleb Johnson's incredible. I love Amarion Hampton. The Ohio State backs are great. Dylan Sampson's a monster player. I do ultimately feel right now that the second round is going to be the spot for running backs. I do think Genti goes in the first. Now, whether that's at 6 or 15 or maybe into the 20s. I don't know. It's tough to know how the NFL is going to value running back on a year-to-year basis, especially in a strong class. But I think in round 2, maybe even the back end of round 1, that's where you see a lot of these running backs get off the board. Hampton, Johnson, Judkins, Henderson, Sampson, I think will all be second-round picks or earlier. I really do. In fact, I think they all could be top 50 guys. Now, some will, eventually sneak into the third round, and there are some great backs down the board. There really, really are. We all know how we feel about Cam Scattaboo on this channel. What a beast. But that's where we are right now. Derek Harmon improves the defensive line for the Cowboys, who desperately need it. Cardinals at 16. We're going to go back to interior defensive line here. That's what I was thinking, but now I'm kind of working on the fly, and I'm considering something else. I mean, I know we need to improve this pass rush overall. Now, I am going to go Kenneth Grant. I was very tempted to go Jalen Walker. I think he could go even earlier than this. I think this is a potential top 10 guy. I really do. But he's available at 16. The Cardinals just choose interior defensive line help. Kenneth Grant is a really, really nice player on the interior. Moves really well for his size. And this is a great interior defensive line class as well. Like, between Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, Tyleik Williams. A lot of people like TJ Sanders. I think Walter Nolan goes higher than him. Alfred Collins had a great season. Deion Walker's a really good player. I think Shamar Turner is going to be impactful down the board. I think Howard Cross has flashed. I mean, I think he could end up being a really nice player for a guy that's ranked number 250 right now on the PFF draft board. Nas Stackhouse is somebody preseason that I like quite a bit, but, it's a really good time to need an interior defensive lineman, even just defensive line in general. And we'll include, some of the 3-4 outside linebackers into that group as well. But Grant's a really nice player. Helps out a Cardinals defensive line that needs it in a big way. Seattle at 17. I've done this a lot, but I still feel like it makes a lot of sense. It's Jonas Savaiinaea from Arizona. Has experience at guard and tackle for a Seattle team that really needs both, potentially, depending on how guys bounce back from injury. Savaiinaea makes a ton of sense. He's a really, really nice player. Bucks at 18. I've done this quite a few times, but I'm going to continue to do it. I just think Jalen Walker is a perfect fit for Tampa. If he makes it to this pick, I would be absolutely shocked if he fell beyond them. Of course, the draft order will change. It feels so weird that, Seattle and Tampa, based on their seasons so far, have just kind of fallen off. And it feels crazy that Denver's ahead of them. I know they've played great this year, but going into the season, I never would have expected some of these things, right? I thought Tampa was probably going to end up winning their division, but Atlanta is, I think, currently in line to do so, for sure. So, I mean, things are going to get crazy here down the stretch. I'm really excited to see what happens. I think if Tampa gets into the playoffs, they could definitely make a run. The NFC is weird. The NFC is really weird. We have the Lions, who I think are the best team. The Vikings are playing great. I would not sleep on them at all. Philly, I think, is prone to an upset. We've seen it with Tampa before. The Commanders are a really weird team. I don't know what to think of the Rams. It's an interesting NFC, but Jalen Walker is the selection there to Tampa. And again, I think if Atlanta is on the board and does not take a pass rusher, they're out of their mind. It's a great pass rush class. James Pierce Jr. is a great pass rusher. And it seems like a match made in heaven. If Atlanta can get either one of these two, Jalen Walker or James Pierce, you're in heaven. That is a dream for the Atlanta Falcons that, really just have had the worst pass rush in the league over the past couple of years somehow. It's been so bad. And I'm not sure if the numbers would back that up, that they're actually the worst, but they're in the conversation. They've been terrible. Chargers at 20. I panic-picked Luther Burden here earlier when I kind of maybe wanted Tyler Warren, but I still think it makes sense. I'm going Luther Burden again. I just think this receiving core is not good. You lose Keenan Allen, obviously. That was by your own choice, maybe the right decision. Quentin Johnston, and Josh Palmer is going to be leaving probably, but Quentin Johnston cannot be your wide receiver one. He can't be. Burden at least gives you another option. Johnston is your X, I guess, of the future. Burden can be the Z. He can play in the slot as well. He's a great player. He's awesome after the catch. And we're sensing a trend here, right? What can Quentin Johnston do? Not go up and get it. He's great after the catch, though. He's a bigger bodied guy or taller. He's great after the catch. Burton's great after the catch. You're a run-heavy offense at times. This is just get the ball in the hands of playmakers and let them work. Burton fits into that mold. Texans at 21. Got Tyleik Williams here. Do I like that still? I think I do. Tyleik Williams is a really nice player. You know, that whole Ohio State defensive line is good. And that sometimes worries me because does it make some guys look better than others? You think back to some of those great Clemson defensive lines where you can just name all these first-round picks that went, like Cleveland Ferrell, Dexter Lawrence, right? There were so many of these guys, Christian Wilkins, that made up an amazing defensive line. And then, I mean, we've seen Vic Beasley was a first-round pick, and I mean, most recently, guys like Ruka Rororo went inside the top 50 or 100 picks. You know, like these classically always good defensive lines. Who's helping who, right? Who's bolstering the entire group and maybe making it look like some guys are better than they actually are? It's interesting to say. Because on Ohio State, you have Tyleik Williams, right? I mean, you had Michael Hall last year on the interior, and now you have JC Tuimoloau. You have Jack Sawyer in the same group. You have a lot of NFL offensive linemen on this, or defensive linemen on the same defensive line. Who's looking better than they are? I don't know. Anyway, just food for thought. I do think Tyleik Williams is a really good player, and for a team that could use interior defensive line help, really just getting more youth in there, I think Tyleik Williams kind of fits the bill, as I will rush to the podium to turn in the Tyler Warren card for Denver. I think tight end has been a disappointing position for him. Obviously, you expected more from Greg Dulcich. It didn't happen. Tyler Warren is a great player. Even got Heisman votes. This was a guy who finished, I think, 7th in the Heisman. Great player and a great pickup here at 22 for Denver. I think you do see multiple tight ends go in the first round. Warren, a very different player from Colston Loveland. Loveland, again, is more of that power slot. Warren can actually play in line. He's 6'6", 260. He can block, and he can definitely catch. Is he an explosive athlete? Not explosive, but I think he's good enough. Rams at 23. Got Ariante Ursary. It pretty much just continues to be a tackle here for me. I just think that's the way to go if you're the Rams. Keep building around Matthew Stafford for as long as you can. And I just think left tackle's been a bit of a weird position. Can I rely on Alaric Jackson long term? What's the Rob Havenstein situation or Havenstein situation long term at right tackle? I don't know. I think it just makes sense to get somebody else and somebody young in that group. Commanders at 24, going back to the well of Savone Revel. Revel, I think, is a perfect fit for Dan Quinn here with this Washington defense. Their cornerback group is not what you'd want it to be. You got to get Benjamin St-Juste off the field. I, as a Giants fan, I don't like the Commanders or anybody in the NFC East. That includes the Giants. I hate them, even though I'm a fan of them. But as much as I would love for Benjamin St-Juste to keep playing there forever, you got to upgrade him. Savone Revel helps you do that. Steelers at 25, Emeka Egbuka. Reliable, can work in the slot. He catches the football. The Steelers have some options on the outside. They do. Do you have the reliable chain mover on the inside that isn't afraid to take a hit, that catches the ball, that can break a tackle, that can move the chains? I don't really know that they do have that guy consistently over the middle. Emeka Egbuka is that guy. Ravens at 26. I think I might have done this last week, but I still feel really good about it. Yeah, I'm going Shamar Stewart here from Texas A&M. Just feels like a Ravens type of player. You look at him, he's 6'6", 290. He can work off the edge. Their pass rush has been disappointing. But also, could this not eventually be your Calais Campbell type of player with that size, with that athleticism, with that strength, with that length in the trenches? I think it potentially could be. And to get now Nnamdi Madubuike, a nice partner in crime on the defensive line, I think it could be pretty fun. Now, is he an edge rusher? Is he somebody that moves inside? I think it depends on the down and distance, but I do think he's athletic enough to play off the edge. I think he's big enough to move inside. Base 5 tech. Maybe he plays 3 tech on passing downs, right? I think he and Madubuike would be a monster on the interior. But again, I do think he can play off the edge, as he's done at Texas A&M. Packers at 27. Benjamin Morrison for me. He's actually right here. We'll go Benjamin Morrison. Again, I think he's going to drop due to injury, but could be a steal here at the back end of the first round for a team that needs to upgrade corner. Eagles at 28. I hate this pick as a Texas fan, but man, it's a great pickup. Cam Williams to the Eagles. Enroll him in Stoutland University. This is your Lane Johnson replacement of the future. He's a raw freak athlete. The Eagles are drooling over that. Jeff Stoutland, I'm sure, would turn Cameron Williams into an all-pro. Here's the bottom line. He's going to probably go earlier than this. He is 6'5", 335, with elite movement skills at that size. Elite length. This is someone that is a first-round pick. Teams will take the chance. In my opinion, this isn't Texas bias. It's just looking at what goes early in the NFL draft. It's size and speed. It's projectability. It's traits. He's an Eagle if he's there. I really would be shocked if he's not. Buffalo Bills at 29. I just want to talk about this guy, right? He's a great player. I've really put in a bunch of different edge rushers into the first round over a lot of these, whether that's been Donovan Ezeraku or Kyle Kennard. Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau have been first-round picks for me. I think I may even had Ashton Gelati in the first round at one point. I think Princely Uman Mielen could end up being a first-round pick. Landon Jackson was a first-rounder for me last week. I've had LT Overton in the first round. There are a lot of edge rushers in this class. I honestly think you're going to see 10 go in the top 40, probably. Maybe 12 in the top 50. I think you're going to see a lot fly off the board. And one of those guys that could fly off the board is Mike Green from Marshall. A Marshall pass rusher, a Marshall player in the first round. What is he, Randy Moss? No, he plays a completely different position, and they're not comparable at all. They did both go to Marshall, though. He's 6'4", 250. Not going to be in every scheme, right? But he's a pass rusher with some juice. I think he's got some first-round type upside, and he has been highly productive. But I don't really care so much about productivity. I care about projectability. And I think Mike Green does have first-round type traits here at the back end. I think he's probably a top 50 guy. And I think this is someone that could end up being maybe a really great designated pass rusher right away and then work into an every down role. Is Von Miller going to be there forever? I don't think he's going to be. Mike Green there at 29 represents, I think, decent upside. Decent upside. Minnesota at 30. I've basically been running back here the entire time. I'm mixing it up. I'm going to go D-line. You look at some of the guys that are playing meaningful reps on that Minnesota defensive interior. It's some names that you don't want to necessarily be there long term. Like Jerry Tillery is playing a lot. Jerry Tillery has had some flashes, right? But kind of looking more to be a first-round bust more than anything else. Walter Nolan, I think, goes earlier than this. It's consistently one of these guys that I talk about with super high upside that had a really nice season, but it's where does he go? Because he's been a little inconsistent, but the upside's about as high as anybody, right? Where does that guy go? If he was called inside the top 15, I legitimately would not be surprised at all. Cowboys, honestly, could be a great fit. If he was outside of the first round, maybe, it wouldn't really surprise me. Just because he went to like 4 or 5 different high schools. He's been to multiple different colleges in a short time. Are there going to be character concerns there? Some have said, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate, right? But is this a first-round player in terms of talent? Yes. In terms of consistency, maybe not. There's a ton of upside. Can it be unlocked? You have a star if you can. Nolan at 30. Detroit at 31. I like this fit the more I think about it. It's Jahad Campbell from Alabama. Jahad Campbell, first of all, is an amazing player. He's LB1 in the draft. He is 6'3", 245. He was recruited as an edge rusher. He's a great blitzer. And I think for the Lions that love guys that can just do it all, Jahad Campbell is extremely talented in so many different phases of the game. He can drop back as a spot dropper. He's got sideline to sideline type range. He's good in coverage again. But he also is a beast coming downhill. And I think for the Lions, they love their versatility. They love guys that can do it all. They love guys that can impact the game in a number of different ways. And Jahad Campbell can. And he is the pick there at 31. And then to round out the first round, Player I've wanted to talk about, almost got him into the first round of the last mock draft, and we're going to get him into this one. It is Missouri's Armand Membou. Membou is really strong, powerful tackle. You keep him in the state of Missouri here, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. They could use a tackle, and Membou is someone that could end up being a first-round pick. The ranking's a little low on him right now. I'm not convinced he's a first-rounder, but he's one of the better tackles in this class. And with the injury to Josh Simmons, I know everyone loves Wyatt Milam. Marcus Embo, I think you pronounce it that way, is someone that could end up being a top 50 selection. But Armand Membou is somebody that could be a first-round pick. I like keeping him in the state of Missouri. It's a position of need. A lot of the stars are aligning for Membou to be a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. I apologize for that. That is the mock draft. It got weird in a lot of different areas, so I'm sure you hate it. And also, I kept it very similar to what I've been doing in a lot of different areas. And I'm sure that you hate that too. So let me know how much you hate it down in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.